Poetry Center, bringing poetry to Patterson since 1980 at Passaic County Community College.
Everybody, and welcome. Thank you for coming. As many of you probably know, Maria fell. She was in South Jersey, and she broke her shoulder. So, and you know that is the only thing that could keep her from being here, because she's been here. I've seen her with fever. I've seen her with stomach ailments. She's still up here. It would take the hospital, being in the hospital, for her not to be here with you today, but she sends her wishes, and she is very sorry that she can't be with all of you today. So, but we're going to carry on in Maria tradition, and we're going to start with one of her good friends, M.L. Liebler, who is the author of 13 books, including Wide Awake and Someone Else's Dream. I love that title. That's 2008, which won both the Patterson Poetry Prize for Literary Excellence and the American Indie Book Award for 2009. Liebler is the founding director of both the National Writers' Voice Project in Detroit and the Spring-Fed Arts, Metro Detroit Writers' Literary Arts Organization. In 2010, he received the Barnes & Noble's Writer for Writers Award from Poets and Writers, and that's an award that Maria won the year after him, so he's in good company. Okay, and he's going to do, I think we're in for a treat, because he's going to do with his friend, Steve King. They're going to do some combination of poetry and music, so I think we're in for a good time. Okay, so ML, take it away.
Thank you. I'll tell you what's going to happen here. Kind of interesting to do it this way. I might have to stand. I don't really need this anyway, do I? I will. I mean, I'll use it, but I'll stand here. I'll try to. I just want to. This isn't a Grateful Dead concert, so this will not go until 4. And I mostly say it for our other BJ and Lewis Jenkins, our poets, who are going to read. I'm just doing this because I really came here to hear them. And we're going to do just a few pieces. Now, you may not know how we do this, and it was like Susan was asking me, oh, so you're doing music? Well, yeah, sort of, not really. You'll hear it in a minute, and then you'll get it. One thing that I do is, a few things that I do. One thing I have always done, and actually, it's kind of good that Maria's not here, because Maria doesn't like this side of M.L. Liebler so much. She doesn't hate it, but she always says to me, would you just read? You don't have to have music. But you guys are probably a very sophisticated audience, but I started incorporating music and poetry together 30-some years ago because, as you probably are aware, most Americans do not read poetry, will not read poetry, or listen to it. And that's who I want to reach. So you're going to have to suffer through our 5 little pieces here in the way that we do it. But so that's the idea behind it. Now, I want to introduce this guy. I know he's a very unassuming looking fellow. I bought him a shirt yesterday, so no. He works cheap. But actually, I want you to know who he is he's a very talented musician. He is a Grammy Award-winning co-writer, producer, and engineer on most of the Eminem records. He comes out of Detroit, but don't worry, we're not going to... It's not that kind of thing. We're not doing that. Go ahead. Give me a little taste of the... Here's what we were doing in the high school yesterday. then I grab my crotch, start doing that. But that's only in the high school, so we're not going to do that. You know what that song is, don't you? Or if you don't, then who knows what that is? Yeah, it's Lose Yourself from 8 Mile, which Steve is, I think that's what he won his Grammy for, actually. But anyway, so he's also, we are in a very, very good group of musicians in Detroit, a poetry band called the Coyote Monk Poetry Band, M.L. Liebler and Coyote Monk. And we're recording in the same M&M studios now, and Steve is producing and playing. He runs to guitar, he runs to the back, and so forth. So I'm going to start with sort of a little bit of tiding from Detroit, and then we're going to go into a couple of our pieces with some music. This is a participatory piece, and this is a song or poem written by a guy who is buried in Detroit, really kind of came through the Delta up to Rochester. We just played Rochester Tuesday night, Rochester, New York, and then ended up in Detroit, and his name was Sunhouse. So this is a Sunhouse piece, but you got to help me with it. So let's try this, everyone together. Tell me who's that riding John a Revelator? Who's that a riding John a Revelator? Who's that a riding John a Revelator? Wrote the book of the 7 seals. Now God walked down on the cool day, called Adam by his name, but he refused to answer 'cause he was naked and ashamed. I said, who's that riding John a Revelator? Who's that a riding John a Revelator? Who's that a riding John a Revelator? Wrote the book of the 7 seals. Now Christ had 12 apostles, and 3 he laid away. He said, watch over me for just 1 hour while I go over yonder and pray. I said, who's that riding John a Revelator? Who's that a riding John a Revelator? Who's that a riding John a Revelator? Wrote the book of the 7 seals. He wrote the book of the 7 seals. He wrote the book of the 7 seals. He wrote the book of the 7 seals. Thank you. Thank you. Good old Sunhouse. So this is a piece called 2 Poems Together. Blood in the Moon. It's the first poem. The sequence is Blood in the Moon. First poem in it is the Undertone. Then we'll segue into the Blood in the Moon. So just to check, is the volume okay? Or is it too much? Okay. From the undertow, swirling blood of envy flowed, draining my body pale and dry across the bone. Bone earth of death, bone earth of death. And I fascinated myself within the skin of myself, within the skin of my own desire. I stood alone, believing no one, understanding my future less and less, just a shadow against the moon, just a shadow against the moon's face, just a shadow against the moon's face. Moon's face, moon's face, moon's face. my dreams. Notions from the underbrush pump glue in my heart. With sassy talk from clovers, whispered at times. Climb school in the mud, climbs naked in my blood, an unknown rhythm that speaks of leaves that shade the eyelids in the dancing night. All night long I can hear it, I can see it, I can feel it in the moon tonight. All night long I hear it pound and pump and pound. All night long I hear it pound and pump and pound. All night long I can hear it, see it, feel it, just about taste it. There's blood in that moon tonight. I'll see that moon above us here in the Hamilton Club on Church Street in downtown Patterson. When these clouds move away, I'll follow it back to Detroit, across the lake, past Chicago, and pick up the Mississippi River in western Illinois. Take it into St. Louis, take it into Memphis too. I'll ride it down to New Orleans, sweet New Orleans, under the same moon. I'll tell you, Mississippi mud, Mississippi blood, Mississippi mud, under the same moon above us here tonight. Here in Patterson in New Jersey, the same moon that shines all over this world. When I look up I can see it, feel it, taste it, just about reach up there and touch it. There's blood in the moon tonight. All night long, Steve, I hear it. All night long, I can feel it. All night long, I can see it. Oh, Halloween orange up there, and it's glowing, glowing, glowing. Yeah, blood in the moon tonight. Yeah, blood in the moon tonight now. Blood in the moon tonight. Tonight's a night. Tonight's a night. Blood in the moon tonight. Blood in the moon. Blood in the moon. Thank you. So that's kind of how we do it, sort of. Now you see, Susan?
I see.
I do have a beret I could put on so I'd look like a person that does music and poetry. We told the kids at the high school that you can buy a beret for a poet in downtown Patterson and they stitch it to your head. That's how you know you're a poet. And then the kids said, well, we want that. Where do we get that? You know, it's kind of...
It's the new tattoo.
It's the new tattoo. So you might see kids walking around with berets sewn on their scalp. That's exactly it. Don't tell me about it. I don't want to hear what a bad influence... In fact, that's a poem. I'm going to read this little poem. I'm just going to say this poem. You know, it's like, say a poem, Larry Ferlinghetti. Say a poem. Here's a little poem. Kind of explains this, I guess, a bit. Short little 12-line poem. I think Maria's published it before somewhere. Called Rock and Roll. I've thought about the many nights of rock and roll I spent in my youth. Hardcore. My grandma taught me how to rock. She hummed Elvis while she hemmed my pants. She liked Elvis. She liked him so much that she bought me a black leather jacket and a motorcycle hat like Marlon Brando's. That really pissed Mrs. Taylor off. She kicked me out of the first grade. She said I'd be a bad influence on all the other kids. I didn't like those snotty-nosed kids anyway. They couldn't rock like Grandma. So this is another piece. This is called The Jazz. little softer piece. This is for my poetry audience. Go ahead, Steve, feel your way around that a little bit. This is for a good friend of mine. Several times we actually brought him to Paterson, New Jersey. He passed away last June. His name was Farouk Zibay. Me and Robert Jones and Farouk used to come and do some school stuff. Susan knows that. So this was for Farouk. I wrote it many years ago. Touch is soft and meaningful and fast, just like the jazz. Uptown in sweat, uptown in tears, in hard driving notes that break our opportunities. And it's high, the jazz, jazz. Yes, it's high, the jazz, jazz. Can you dig what's happening here on a Saturday afternoon? With Louis Jenkins, B.J. Ward, we got the jazz, jazz. Magic poetry, jazz, jazz. You'll beat and polish everything, everything to the bone. So when this is over, when our day is over, let us say no words and just listen, 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 listen. Just listen to the jazz, jazz, the poetry, jazz, 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 jazz. Listen to Steve strum a little bit of that jazz, jazz. So in America, when the sun goes down, and I sit on the old broken down river pier, watching the long, long skies over New Jersey. And I sense all that raw land that rolls into one unbelievable huge bulge, all the way over to the West Coast. And all that road going, and all the people dreaming in the immensity of it. And in Iowa, I know by now the children must be crying in the land where they let the children cry. And tonight the stars will be out. Tonight the stars will be out over Duluth, Minnesota. So all that rain's coming this way. Over Duluth, Minnesota. Don't you know that God is Pooh Bear, God is Pooh Bear, God is Pooh Bear? And the evening star must be drooping and shedding her sparkler dim on the prairie, which is just before the coming of complete night that will bless the earth, darken all the river, cup the peaks and folds the final shore in. And nobody knows what's gonna happen to anybody besides the forlorn rags of growing old. I think of Dean Moriarty. I even think of an old Dean Moriarty, the father we never found. I think of Dean Moriarty. I think of Dean Moriarty, the jazz, jazz. Yeah, the jazz, jazz, jazz. Beats and polishes everything, every damn thing, everything. Right down right down to the bone, yes. So when this is over, all the poetry's over, let us say no words. Let us say no words and just listen, 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 listen to the jazz, jazz, to the jazz, jazz. Just listen. Just listen. Steve King. Thanks. Thank you. So we'll just do a couple more pieces here. I think maybe 2 is enough because I want to hear the poetry jazz. This actually, we've been doing a lot of these things, and we've been in schools through Susan. And, at gigs and at schools, people ask the question, how do you, write poems with the music? Do you write the music and then the poems, or the poems and then the music? And in my case, the poems are all written and published in books, and then later, through various means, they're brought to music. Either musicians like Steve will come to me, as you're going to hear in a minute, with music, or members of our group will, or sometimes I hear music in my head that I bring to the group, and then they translate it, thank God, and make it sound even better than what I heard in my head. As on our new CD, there's that kind of stuff. But this is one poem I actually did write many years ago with some percussion in it, but this is Steve's music. Steve, in addition to, being a musician and writing and everything, he's the guy that, in rap music, for example, you hear the melody, which is like the best part. That's him. So fortunately, he's been, he doesn't sleep very well. And when he doesn't, he creates loops like you're going to hear, and he sends them to me, and then I find appropriate poems, and this is the case with one of them. This is called Floating, and this is actually some of the music that Steve came up with.
Thank you.
It's all right, we're used to that in Detroit. We fix it ourselves. So this is Floating, and Steve's loops. Eminem didn't get this one. They worked her into the mud. They beat her head into the tiles, into the workhouses. They slit her belly up and dressed her like a deer after the almighty hunt. Now I understand how my mother died. Now I understand how my mother died in the lie that surrounded her labor, her honest labor that boiled production, brought it all to a head for their profit, for her dead spirit drained the blood. No one to cover bones, no one to wipe her brow over her sunken eyes. So this how my mother died. This how my mother died. Honest work for honest pay. Honest work for honest pay. This lie is white hot. This lie is white hot, but it won't burn forever. It won't burn forever. In her breast forever, ever, ever, ever. Now my mother flashes, flashes, flashes before my eyes. Before my eyes, working her ass off to maintain her room, her little room. East side of Detroit in the projects, 1950s, just after my birth. Just after my birth. Honest pay for honest work. Honest pay for honest work. This lie can't live. This lie can't live forever. 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 And when she died, and when her ADC check stopped, and when they didn't have to give her money, Then they missed her labor, her cheap, cheap labor. Then they remembered her. Then they remembered her part of their lives. Then they remembered her part of their lives. Then they remembered her part of their lie. It keeps forever, forever, forever. Before my eyes she flashes, flashes, smolders in their kitchen, in their ovens, in her sweat and labor. It won't live. It lives. It won't live. It lives. It won't live. It won't live. It lives forever. It lives forever. It won't live. Floating. Thank you. Steve King. Thank you. And we'll just finish with this piece. This is another loop of Steve's that he had written that fits with a poem of mine that I used to do years ago. It's called Africa. I wrote this poem for Fela, which I was fortunate enough that Fela got a chance to be presented with it and read it and liked it in a rare Detroit visit. So this is Steve's music, and this is the poem Africa, and we'll finish. Thank you very much. A decision made when first I was a rhythm and sensation moving towards an unfocused destination. Somehow, some way I had to produce just so I could evaporate back into a raindrop left to hang from a bright green leaf, the size and texture of an elephant's ear. From the moss my soul oozed like a hydra dream, or more like an amoeba. It was chasing itself, circle within circle. I was once a heartbeat, buried deep in the bare mud. I was myself, pulsating and changing, convoluting and flowing, furrowing time in the same way that time cuts the river deep. I am the river, I am the river, I am the river, I am the river. In my whiteness, in my blackness, I was loved. I was once a heartbeat buried deep in the bare mud. I was myself, pulsating and changing, convoluting and flowing. I was furrowing time, same way that time cuts the river deep. I am the river, I am the river, I am the river, I am the river, I am the river. So there was a rhythm and sensation made when first I was. Rhythm and sensation, rhythm and sensation. First I was in Africa, in Africa. We all come from Africa, the cradle of civilization. We all come, no matter what color our skin is. We come from Africa, Africa, Africa. I am the river, I am the river of Africa. I am the river, I am the river of Africa. Thank you. Old poem for Fela. Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
So how is it going these days?
Everything's going swell. Been in Patterson for a few days. Did the Poets in the School with Steve King from the M&M Studios in Detroit. We've been doing some music and poetry shows, and we have been traveling around the country doing a bunch of gigs, and I've been traveling solo around the world to every place from Afghanistan to London, England. So everything's great. Good.
Great, thank you, sir. Where is that all coming from? I gather you've been in it for a while. Are you able to share with us kind of where all this comes from, and now mixing with spoken word, or have you been using your music with spoken word for a while?
Well, with ML, I just started using it. Like he was explaining that I have these tracks when I have insomnia. I stay up and I write, and I'll send them to him in the middle of the night, and he'll find a poem that goes with them. And we just keep trying new ones and switching things around. And it's been a breakthrough for me because I've been able to utilize a lot of the stuff that I'm writing, and it's great.
Is this your first time being in P-Town or Patterson?
Yes.
Okay, well,
Yes.
Welcome to Patterson, and we
Thank you.
appreciate your talent, brother.
We played the Patterson High School and the International High School.
Oh, yeah.
Met some really nice kids here, and we connected with a lot of them, and
Cool.
that's what was really great.
What did you think about the acoustics at the International High School? Now, that's a brand new. Did you play
It
in the
was
theater?
beautiful, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay. All
That
right.
was sweet. I like the old one too. I'd like to fire up that old organ they got in there, that B3.
Yeah.
But this was beautiful here today. This is a great venue. I love this building.
Oh, yeah.
Very good, sweet.
Great. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
We're going to continue with B.J. Ward, actually. He's not one of our featured poets, but he was gracious enough to come this morning and do a workshop for us, and I know some in the room took a workshop with him, and I asked him to read some of his work. He has 2 books, right? You have a book out there, and he has a new book that's coming out. It's called Jack Leg Opera, and it's going to be out in September. And he's going to read something from that, and something from his other book, which is called Gravedigger's Birthday. And he is also a recipient of a Pushcart Prize and 2 fellowships from the New Jersey State Council on the Arts and the Geraldine R. Dodge Foundation. And he's an associate professor of creative writing at Warren County Community College. So let's welcome BJ.
Yeah.
Well, it's an honor to be asked to read with ML and Lewis. And thank you. The title of this poem is, I'm a father of a 6-year-old, and the title of this poem is the last line in a storybook I read to my son Dylan. And all the peasants cheered for the king, the end. I close the storybook and my son looks up. He is swaddled with a bravery he knows nothing about. Astronauts floating across his pajamas. Soldiers bivouacking on his bookshelf. Knights on his lamp so that his light shines right through armor. What's a peasant, Daddy? I don't think much of the answer. A poor person, like Grandma and Grandpa. And now the story is personal. My son plays on the junkers my father works on forever. The front yard is Grandpa's cold scriptoria, and he writes everything in blue-collar serifs, spending his days off translating metal into combustion. Henry Ford invented the printing press that churned out his Bible. And my mother, with her 3 shirts that fit, her Newark accent a Cockney in my son's suburban world. When I lend my parents money, that word has to be used, lend, or else they wouldn't take it. Even poor people have pride as a lawyer. I was his age when I first knew we were poor. Are we poor? I had asked my mother. Her eyes were just beginning their descent deeper into her beauty. They may have begun to run away from the world just then at her older son's question. No, her mouth said, as obviously as possible. Her hand stroked my hair. It said, I'm erasing that question. Her tremble said, yesterday my boss held an empty wallet to my head. But were we rich somehow? Come on, you know the cliches. But were we rich in another way? My father knows how to make stillness explode. At the food town, the cashiers always smiled, for my mother was an S&H green stamp magnate. My brother and I learned how to love without dropping our eyes below the neck. If money's king, my family served it well. We only asked to be able to sleep through the night. And right now, my own son is looking up at me, seeing something he doesn't recognize. I tell him, peasants live in kingdoms, and shut out the light. The astronauts are still fastened in their flotation. The soldiers still guard the fairy tales. Poems from the book coming out in September, and here's one more from that. It's called Cross-Pollination. My favorite cross-pollination is the one between Shakespearean English and Jersey City English. This particular breed of language has trouble surviving modern airs, but recalcitrantly remains in one final saying. I shit you not. Such mellifluous wings skirting inches above a manure field. It means, I do not shit you. Yet no one says that. If one were to say it, we'd expect a head shake or social shunning. But I shit you not implies that the speaker is fairly well read. And furthermore, is not prevaricating about the matter at hand. My favorite instance of it came when I was told that my boss, who fired me, was fired for being a lousy boss. Bradford called me up and said, Ward, he was fired. I shit you not. Or my mother telling me an acceptance letter arrived from a college saying, you got in. I shit you not. Or Gretchen Honecker in the late 20th century parking lot of the White Castle telling me, I love you. I, a bigger fool then than I am now, said, really? And she leaned close to my ear and whispered, I shit you not. The saying is a nail driving through disbelief, expelling dismissal, peeling yes, amen, nod, 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 and tacking a friend's voice to one of those rare moments in life one would never get rid of.
All right.
Thank you very much. I know none of you came to hear me, and I'm very grateful, Susan, for your invitation to read. No. I'm not begging for that. But I'm going to read one more poem and get off the stage for Louis. Thank you very much for listening. In the spirit of, that was terrific, by the way. I mean, I view this, it's an honor to be here. Shit you not, right? This place is, they say that Western Native Americans had a couple spiritual centers, the Black Hills of South Dakota and the San Francisco Bay Area. If New Jersey poetry has a spiritual center, this is absolutely it, or at least one of the big ones, right? So thank you for inviting me and for keeping this going, which is nothing easy to do. Those of you who aren't familiar with my work, my name's B.J. Ward, and this book, I'm going to read one poem from it, and if you'd like to buy it, it's out there. And this is because tomorrow's Mother's Day. This is from my mom. And my son's surrogate grandmother, Maddie Tiger, is here. And so you're a wonderful, important person to me. My first book is dedicated to my mother, even though there's not a single poem in there about her. And for years, people asked me, why is your first book dedicated to your mother when there's not a single poem in there about her? This poem is called Upon Being Asked Why I Dedicated My First Book to My Mother when there's not a single poem in there about her. This book, about a quarter of the poems, I talked about this with the workshop this morning, deal with a family that's a lot like mine. I had a father who was a violent drunk. He was sober for a while before I could write the book, and I'd forgiven him, and this book's about forgiveness. But one of the byproducts of substance abuse in a family, in case you're not familiar with it, is the money's gone. The money's gone. And come 8th grade, there were words in books I had no idea what they meant. I'm the first one in my family to go to college or anything like that, so this is something extraordinary that my mother did. As Prometheus must have pocketed fire, slipping it from Olympus in the folds of his compassion and duplicity, so my mother stole a Webster's Pocket Dictionary. The Jamesway department store was all discounts and lighting that refused to flatter. Commerce sliding through its aisles as my mother slipped that book into her jacket, getting 30,000 words fatter. I know the arguments. That's stealing. What about the owner? What about teaching her son what's right? In truth, the entire Jamesway Corporation would go out of business 21 years later. And I'm sure it had to do with the Webster's Riverside Pocket Dictionary, whose pages held all the words of Ulysses and Paradise Lost and Look Homeward Angel, but jumbled in alphabetical order. What can I say? She stole a dictionary for me because there were no words a judge could use that would be worse than her son starving for a lexicon he could grip like a wrench and loosen all those dumb bolts in his brain. Receiving that dictionary taught me rectitude and the many dictates that come down from its cloistral mountaintop. I was suddenly rich. A son from the most indigent family in Hampton. How lucky. When I first started to rub against my language, sidle up to my own tongue, my mother stole me a book. Years later, I gave her one back. Oh, wow. Thank you very much.
So that book paid off. That mom's got you, huh? That dictionary.
Yeah, that's a poem that is dedicated. It's a dedication to my mother and her incredible love for my brother and me.
Is that why you don't fly?
She doesn't like that poem though, because she's afraid somebody's going to hear it and come to arrest her for stealing a dictionary, 30 years ago.
Yeah.
So, but I told her, Ma, it's okay. I'll get you out of jail. I'll pay my mother's bail.
Yeah.
And that is the mark of a good son. Will you pay your mother's bail?
What I of course look way past how one got the book and gave it to you, but it must have been enough that it inspired you, one, not to just write the poem, but two, to do something with those words to use that language to get to where you are today, and that I appreciate.
Thank you. Yeah.
I've taken it into New York.
That poem, upon being asked if I dedicated my first book to my mother, and there's not a single poem in there about her. It's about two economies. One is the commercial economy that so much of our comings and goings are predicated on here in this nation, money. But it's also about a deeper economy.
Yes.
Right? Deeper than money.
Right.
I mean, money is the basest way to be rich.
Right.
There are much more profound ways to be rich.
Yes.
And in that way, even though she, in a sense, in the poem, stole from that surface economy of commerce, she contributed to the deeper economy of filial love.
And look how much you have given back.
Well,
to all those folks who were taking your class, all those folks, what you shared with us today, and the many folks who will never know you personally, but through this language of words and this media, we thank you.
Ming.
Okay?
Ming, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Yes.
Okay, and now last but definitely not least, Louis Jenkins. His most recent books are North of the Cities, 2007, European Shoes, 2008, and Before You Know It, Prose Poems, 1970 to 2005. All published by Willow Lewis Books. Jenkins was awarded 2 Bush Foundation Fellowships for Poetry, a Loft McKnight Fellowship, and was the 2000 George Morrison Award winner. Jenkins is currently working with Mark Rylance, former director of the Globe Theatre, London, on a stage production titled Nice Fish, based on Jenkins' poems, and the work premiered at the Guthrie Theatre in Minneapolis. Did that happen? Yeah, on April 6th.
Wow.
Okay, take it away.
Thank you. What a treat to read with these guys. Wow. I didn't know it was going to be this much fun. This is a poem when ML was doing his Africa piece. I thought of this, and I opened the book, and here it is. It's called Evolution. I think it's okay not to like the idea of evolution. I can understand how one would not like to think of oneself as distantly related to a lemur, since most of us are none too fond of some of our more immediate relatives. But it seems to me that evolution is the least of our worries. For years I have accepted things as they are, or seem to be, without thinking much about them. Not now. Now I have come to realize that I don't approve of gale force winds, or high water, or volcanoes, or earthquakes. The idea of tectonic plates doesn't appeal to me. The idea that we are dependent on gravity to keep us on the ground makes me queasy. The idea that there is no up or down and we are merely sticking out from the planet. I don't like at all the idea of flight, except for birds. I don't even enjoy riding in automobiles. I believe, even though I do not practice it, that we should walk everywhere we go. But there's the problem with standing, balance, and all of that. I'm not sure that just 2 legs is a good idea. I need more sound. I wrote in this book a series of animal poems. I didn't start out intentionally to do that, but I found that I had a number of them. I went to Alaska a while back, a few years ago, and one of the places I went, they had a kind of aquarium thing with starfish in it, so you could actually reach in and touch a starfish. And then I got to reading about starfish. It seems like starfish don't do anything, but actually they move along at a rate of about 60 feet per hour. A starfish will eat anything that moves slower than it does, which excludes a great number of dishes from its diet. A starfish is all arms and appetite. It has no brain. Yet in spite of this, time-lapse photography has shown that the starfish maintains an active social life. So in these regards, the starfish is like many of the people you know. This is called Bologna. There's a young couple in the parking lot kissing. Not just kissing, they look as though they might eat each other up. Kissing, nibbling, biting, mouths wide open, play fighting like young dogs, wrapped around each other like snakes. I remember that, sort of, that hunger, that passionate intensity, and I get a kind of nostalgic craving for it, in the way that I get a craving occasionally for the food of my childhood. Bologna on white bread, for instance. One slice of white bread with mustard or Miracle Whip or ketchup. Not ketchup. One has to draw the line somewhere. And one slice of bologna. It had a nice symmetry, the circle of bologna on the rectangle of bread. Then you folded the bread and bologna in the middle and took a bite out of the very center of the folded side. And when you unfolded it, the sandwich, you had a hole, a circle in the center of bread and bologna frame, a window, a porthole from which you could get a whole new view of the world. This is a poem that Maria published in the Patterson Review. It's called Illusion. Is it true that this world, this life, is an illusion, all smoke and mirrors? It must be, because according to a recent poll, 70% of the American public believes that Ronald Reagan did a good job as president. And yet, if life is only a figment, a feint, a construction of breath and vapor, then why is it when a rock falls and smashes your toe, you go hopping around on one foot, mad with pain? Why, when you happen to look at a woman on the sidewalk and your car plows into the truck in front of you, are you dead and no longer allowed to play the game? It's an illusion, all right, but it's a damn good one. This is called A Disappointment. The best anyone can say about you is that you are a disappointment. We had higher expectations of you. We had hoped that you would finish your schooling. We had hoped that you would have kept your job at the plant. We hoped that you would have been a better father and a better son and a better father. We hoped and fully expected that you would finish reading Moby Dick. I wish that when I am talking to you, you would at least raise your head off your desk and look at me. There are people who, without your gifts, have accomplished so much in this life. I am truly disappointed. Your parents, your wife and children, your entire family. In fact, everyone you know is disappointed, deeply disappointed. Here's another one to go with Africa. This is called The Law of the Jungle. We die of silliness, finally. Remember all those nights of wine, the heated discussion, the smoky room, the music? The questions you pondered then have no relevance. Why do we live, you asked. More to the point now is, where do I live? First you forget to zip. Then as time goes by, you forget to unzip. There is a banana peel around every corner. Remember all those powerful, intense things you said back then, how the girls found you powerful and intense? You couldn't say those things with a straight face now. And anyway, those girls weren't really listening. The old lion with patchy mane and sagging belly stands up to guard his territory. He gives out a pathetic roar, and the hyenas die laughing. big brown pills. I believe in the big brown pills. They lower cholesterol and improve digestion. They help prevent cancer and build brain cells. Plus, they just make you feel better all over. I believe in coffee and beet greens and fish oil, of course, and red wine in moderation, and cinnamon. Green tea is good, and black tea, and ginseng. I eat my broccoli. Nuts are very good, and dark chocolate. It has to be dark chocolate, not milk chocolate. Tomatoes. But I think the big brown pills really help. I used to believe in the little yellow pills, but now I believe in the big brown pills. I believe they are much more effective. I still take the little yellow pills, but I really believe in the big brown ones. This is called the Afterlife. Older people are exiting this life as if it were a movie. I didn't get it, they are saying. He says, it didn't seem to have any plot. No, she says, it seemed like things just kept coming at me. Most of the time I was confused, and there was way too much sex and violence. Violence, anyway, he says. There's not much for character development either. Most of the time people were either shouting or mumbling. Then when someone started to make sense and I got interested, they died. And a whole lot of new characters came along and I couldn't tell who was who. The whole thing lacked subtlety. So for a while. It is a summer night and they walk slowly, stopping now and then as if they had no particular place to go. They walk past a street lamp where some incense. She says, I was never happy with the way I looked. The lighting was bad and I was no good at dialogue, he says. I would have liked to have been a little taller, she says. Here's another little animal poem. This is a squirrel. The squirrel makes a split-second decision and acts on it immediately, heading across the street as fast as he can go. Sure, it's fraught with danger. Sure, there's a car coming. Sure, it's reckless and totally unnecessary, but the squirrel is committed. He will stay the course. Just a few new ones. I don't know when we're supposed to end here. Were we supposed to end at 2?
Oh.
Okay.
Don't stop.
Haircut. Shall I get my hair cut after my hair has gotten too long, have it cut too short, and await the day, the hour when my hair reaches its perfect length? Or should I have it cut often, keeping my coif constantly at its optimum length? That becomes expensive, and besides, I like to live in anticipation of the moment. But the moment passes so quickly. For instance, there must have been a period in my life when I finally got when I was at my peak. Maybe it was only a year or so when at last I got my act together, maybe only for a few weeks or days, when my mental and physical powers were at their fullest. Maybe it was only a couple of hours in the early morning of some forgotten day and I slept through the whole thing. And when I awoke, things had already begun to deteriorate. This is called regret. There's no use in regret. You can't change anything. Your mother died unhappy with the way you turned out. You and your father were not on speaking terms when he died. And you left your wife for no good reason. Well, it's past. You may as well regret missing out on the conquest of Mexico. That would have been your kind of thing back when you were 18. A bunch of murderous Spaniards out to destroy a culture and get rich. On the other hand, the Aztecs were no great shakes either. It's hard to know who to root for in this situation. The Aztecs thought they had to sacrifice lots of people to keep the sun coming up every day. And it worked. The sun rose every day. But it was backbreaking labor, all that sacrificing. The priests had to call in the royal family to help, and their neighbors, and the gardener, the cooks. You can see how this is going to end. You're going to have your bloody, beating heart ripped out, but you're going to have to stand in line in the hot sun for hours, waiting your turn. Here's a Minnesota poem. Life in the woods. The woods around here have grown up sheerly to depress you with their dampness and dark. The small birds have all flown away, leaving you alone in the gloom. For a point of reference, there's a pile of rusted cans and broken bottles. For company, there are mosquitoes. If you call for help, you're put on hold. If you live long enough in the forest people, some so old and bent over that their long noses touch the ground, the hidden ones, those conversant with the moon and the devil and the west wind, may come in the night once or twice a month and clean your bathroom, or not, which means they don't like you. I'll read one or two more, and then I wanted to read. In Sitka, this is called Earl. In Sitka, because they are fond of them, people have named the sea lions. Every sea lion is named Earl because they are killed one after another by the orca, the killer whale. Seal bodies tossed left and right into the air. At least he didn't get Earl, someone says. And sure enough, after a time, that same friendly, bewhiskered face bobs to the surface. It's Earl again. Well, how else are you to live except by denial? By some palatable fiction, some little song to sing while the inevitable, the black and white blindsiding fact, comes hurtling towards you out of the deep. Here's a TV. Short one and then one last one. Thunderstorm warning. The National Weather Service has issued a severe thunderstorm warning effective until 2 a.m. Viewers should expect heavy rain, hail, damaging winds, dizziness, nausea, headache, fainting, disorientation, uncertainty, loss of direction, and the questioning of deeply held beliefs. Persons in the warning area should seek shelter immediately. If you are caught out in the open, you should lie face down in a ditch or a depression. I'll end with this one. It's called Somersault. Some children did handsprings or cartwheels. Those of us who were less athletically gifted did what we called somersaults, really a kind of forward roll, head down in the summer grass, a push with the feet, then the world flipped upside down and around. Your feet, which had been behind you, now stretched out in front. It was fun, and we did it laughing again and again. Yet as fun as it was, most of us at some point quit doing somersaults. But only recently, someone at Evening Rest, managed care for seniors, discovered the potential value of somersaults as physical and emotional therapy for the aged. A recapturing of youth, perhaps. Every afternoon during the summer and early fall, weather permitting, the old people, despite their feeble protests, are led or wheeled onto the lawn, where each is personally and individually aided in the heels overhead tumble into darkness. When the wind is right, you can hear, even at this distance, the crying of those who have fallen and are unable to rise. Thank you very much.
inspiration? You were very, very good today. What kind of drives you, puts together all these little quick anecdotic thoughts, this poetry? I mean, it just seems to be a lot of answering a lot of questions that we're running around with. And
Yeah, I suppose I ask myself those questions and try to think of an answer, but usually when one asks those questions, you don't find an answer.
that's why I thought it was like, that's why you noticed throughout your whole performance that people were clapping because they were kind of acknowledging, your observations of the answers that we're all looking for. Is there anything else that you might want to say, or you could say to folk who are looking for answers for those questions?
Well, good luck, I would say. No, you just keep asking, and maybe you'll, if not find the answer, at least find a way to live with whatever the problem is. That's what I guess.
Great. Thank you, sir.
You bet.